My name is Margaret Hill. And the woman who tried to erase me from my own family didn't even flinch when she did it. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Grace's Truth. Now get in the mood to listen to this story, because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. I moved in to help, nothing more. My daughter Eliza had begged me to. After her second maternity leave ended, she needed someone she could trust with her youngest Rosie. Just for a few months, Mom, she said over the phone, her voice tired but hopeful. I had already retired from my position as a school principal. I had time, and I loved Rosie to bits. So I packed up my things and moved into the guest room of their quiet, beige-bricked house tucked into a suburban cul-de-sac. It was supposed to be temporary. At first, everything felt warm. Rosie was a joy. She clung to me like ivy to a tree. Eliza's schedule was brutal, but we shared late-night cups of chamomile when she got home. And Ava, her wife, seemed polite if distant. We never had much in common, but we coexisted fine. The first time I felt something shift, it was minor. I had put my shoes in the front hallway like I always did. Ava picked them up and set them on the back porch. "We're trying to keep this space minimalist," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I smiled and nodded. It was her house after all. Or so I thought. The second time Rosie cried when I didn't tuck her in because I was doing dishes. Ava told her sharply, "Grandma's busy. Go to sleep." The little girl looked confused, then afraid. That night she crawled into bed with me. "She doesn't like when I love you too much," she whispered. My chest tightened. I brushed it off like mothers often do. I told myself I was imagining it, that Ava was just a bit stressed, that it was hard juggling a household. Eliza certainly thought so. She praised her wife constantly for keeping things together. But things kept unraveling in small, cold ways. Ava began buying food I didn't eat. She rearranged the laundry schedule so my clothes were always last and damp. Once she told me the Wi-Fi password had changed and never gave me the new one. It was like dying by paper cuts. Still, I bit my tongue. Every single time. Eliza needed me. Rosie adored me. And I wasn't about to stir drama in a young family. But Ava, she knew what she was doing. The silence between us grew heavier. She never looked me in the eye. If I walked into a room, she walked out. Her smiles were hollow and laced with calculation. I started keeping notes. Not out of spite, out of survival. Years of being a principal taught me that sometimes you need a log. So I wrote down every shift, every denial of space, every sharp comment, every time Rosie said something that didn't sound like it came from a child. The day Eliza announced her business trip, I saw it in Ava's eyes. That flicker. That something. "Oh," she said, folding laundry stiffly. "How long are you gone?" "Just 5 days," Eliza replied. "Mom will help with the girls. You'll be okay, right?" Of course, Ava smiled thinly. "We'll manage just fine." I didn't sleep that night. Something inside me, an old instinct, was screaming. I stood in the kitchen, sipping cold tea, watching Ava move like a shadow. I knew she was planning something, but I couldn't yet name it. All I knew was that this wasn't just a cold daughter-in-law. This was someone who wanted me gone, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because my presence reminded her that this family had roots deeper than her marriage certificate. She wanted to be the matriarch, and I was in her way. The day Eliza left, Rosie clung to her leg and cried. "I'll be back soon, baby. Grandma and Mama Ava will take care of you," Eliza said, kissing her forehead. Then she looked at me. "Thank you again, Mom." "Seriously?" I smiled. "You go conquer that meeting. We've got this." That's the last time things felt normal. That night, I went to bed early. I was tired, and Rosie had been restless all afternoon. I left the kitchen clean, the toys put away, and even folded some laundry that wasn't mine. When I woke up the next morning, everything had changed. The guest room. My room was empty. The bed was gone. My suitcase was in the hallway. The dresser drawers were open, and the closet door hung half off its hinge. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I called out Ava. She was in the living room sipping coffee, wearing Eliza's old college sweatshirt. "Oh," she said, "we're turning that room into a playroom for Rosie. You can sleep on the porch couch for now." Just like that. Like I was a stray dog. She didn't even try to soften it. No explanation. No apology. No shame. I didn't respond. I just stared at her. She didn't meet my gaze. I looked at Rosie, who sat silently on the floor coloring a red heart onto a paper. Her eyes wouldn't lift to mine. That was the first night I slept outside. And not because I wanted to. The porch cushions were thin. The wood underneath creaked every time I shifted. And the air turned colder than usual that night, as if it knew something was wrong in that house. I stared at the stars blinking against the chill and thought, I gave up everything to help them, and now I'm here like trash left on the back steps. At some point, I drifted into a shallow sleep. I was woken by voices low, urgent, and coming from the kitchen. The window was cracked open just above me, the curtain barely drawn. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I couldn't move. Their voices had me frozen. She needs to go, Ava said, her voice clipped and sharp. She's turning Rosie against me. A pause. I don't care what Eliza said. She's not part of this household. She was supposed to be temporary. I heard the clink of a glass being set down. Then her voice again, quieter now, but laced with venom. She watches me like I'm some intruder in my own home. I'm tired of playing nice. A second voice, lower male but unfamiliar, responded. Eliza's gonna freak if you cross the line. Ava let out a small laugh. She won't even know. I'll make it look clean. My blood ran cold. I didn't move until the voices disappeared and I heard a door close. Only then did I breathe. It wasn't just dislike. It wasn't awkwardness. Ava wanted me gone. Erased. Like a stain on the family photo. And now, with Eliza out of the picture, she finally had full control of the house. The next morning, I walked inside to find my toothbrush missing from the bathroom. My clothes were now folded into a single laundry basket and left in the corner of the hallway. Rosie avoided eye contact. Ava barely acknowledged me. She said morning without looking up from her phone. I didn't answer. Instead, I went into the guest room, or what was once my room, and saw the floor bare. A few of Rosie's toys were scattered across it already. There was a tiny play tent being assembled in one corner, like I had never lived there at all. I sat on the floor, knees creaking beneath me, and let myself feel the weight of it. This was beyond disrespect. This was intentional erasure. I hadn't just lost my space. I was being made invisible. I thought of my daughter. What she'd say if she saw all this. But I didn't want to ruin her trip. She'd worked hard to earn this opportunity. And Ava knew that. She knew I wouldn't call, not unless it was an emergency. But wasn't this an emergency? Or was I just overreacting again like Ava wanted me to believe? I told myself I'd hold on. 5 days. I could endure 5 days. But that evening, something else changed. Rosie. My sweet Rosie wouldn't sit beside me during dinner. She clung to Ava like she was scared of me. I kept glancing at her, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Finally, I asked gently, Rosie, did I do something wrong? She shook her head. Ava cut in, her tone light but loaded. She's just been having trouble adjusting. Too many adults in the house can confuse a child's routine, you know? I said nothing, but I watched Rosie's face. It wasn't confusion, I saw it was conflict. She looked like someone caught between two stories. That night, I stayed up again, unable to sleep on that porch. I thought about the way Ava moved through the house now like a queen ruling unchallenged. The silence around me was no longer peaceful. It was tactical. I needed to be smart. So I went into the garage the next day and pulled out the old fireproof safe I'd brought with me, something I hadn't touched since I moved in. Inside were copies of the original deed to the house. What Ava didn't know, or maybe had forgotten, was that when Eliza and Ava bought the house, they'd taken a loan from me. A sizable one. Enough to get them out of renting. In return, Eliza had added my name to the title to secure the deal with the bank, and as a gesture of security. It was never meant to mean anything, I never planned to use it. But I was still legally a co-owner. Ava had built her castle on land that wasn't fully hers, and I had receipts. I tucked the folder back into the safe and locked it. That evening, while Ava was out getting groceries, Rosie came to sit beside me on the porch. She leaned against me quietly, then whispered, Mama Ava said you're leaving soon. Are you leaving because you're mad at me? It took every ounce of strength not to cry. No, sweetheart, I whispered. You are the only reason I've stayed this long. She pressed her little head against my arm. I wish Mama Ava wasn't so mad all the time. And then she slipped a tablet into my lap. It's charged, she said. You can call Mommy if you want. I won't tell. I looked down at it. Eliza's name was right there, just one tap away. I didn't press it. Not yet. But I knew I was going to, soon. I didn't sleep at all that night. The air on the porch was colder now, but it wasn't just the temperature. It was the feeling that I no longer belonged in the very place I'd been invited into with open arms. That this house, which once echoed with the warmth of my granddaughter's laughter, was turning into something else entirely. A stage. And I was being quietly written out of the script. The next morning, the shift was no longer subtle. The kitchen door was locked. At first I thought maybe I was imagining things, but I turned. The knob pulled, jiggled it, and nothing. It was deadbolted from the inside. I could hear the sound of dishes clinking beyond the wood. Bacon sizzling. Rosie giggling. I knocked gently. Ava opened it a crack. Her face looked calm, casual, even rehearsed. "Oh," she said, as if she hadn't noticed me standing there. "We're meal prepping this week. Makes the mornings smoother. We'll set a plate aside for you later." She closed the door before I could say a word. Later, I found a cold, dry sandwich in a Ziploc bag placed on a side table on the porch. No note, no drink, just the sandwich. A slice of turkey between two limp pieces of bread. Like I was a stray dog they were keeping fed out of obligation. I didn't eat it. I broke it up into crumbs and fed it to the birds in the yard instead. The rest of the day went the same. Rosie stayed near me when she could, but Ava always found ways to separate us. It's bath time, or she has online schoolwork, or she needs quiet time. I didn't argue. I watched, and I waited. When I stepped inside to use the bathroom, I noticed something else. My photos were gone. The little framed picture of me and Eliza on her graduation day had vanished from the hallway table. The picture of baby Rosie I'd kept near the guest room had been replaced with a decorative candle. Even the magnets on the fridge were new, clean, cold, neutral. Every trace of me was being erased piece by piece. Later that evening, Rosie came to sit beside me again. She had her blanket and a small flashlight. "I brought you my flashlight," she said, placing it on my lap, "in case it gets dark again." I couldn't speak. I just pulled her into a hug. She looked up at me, her voice barely a whisper. "Mama Ava says you don't like her, so she's making you leave." "I'm not leaving because I don't like anyone," I told her gently. Sometimes adults make decisions that hurt others even when they say it's for the best. She nodded solemnly like she understood more than she should have. When Ava came to get her, Rosie refused to go. "I want to sleep with Grandma," she said. Ava froze, her expression shifting almost instantly. "No, sweetie. Grandma doesn't have a bed anymore. Remember." Rosie started crying. I stood up. "She can sleep inside. I'll take the couch." Ava turned to me, smiling tight. "I think it's time we establish boundaries. Eliza will be home soon, and I don't want her walking into chaos." "Right," I said. "Because locking the fridge and removing someone's bed is so orderly." Her face didn't move, but her eyes turned sharp. "You've overstayed your welcome, Margaret. This is my home, and I don't owe you anything." I held her gaze for a moment. "No," I said quietly. "You don't owe me anything, but Eliza does. And Rosie definitely does not deserve this." She crossed her arms. "I'm protecting my daughter from confusion." "You mean love? Stability?" I shot back. "Because I've never taught Rosie to fear anyone. You did that all on your own." She turned on her heel and walked back inside. That night, I lay awake on the porch couch wrapped in Rosie's tiny blanket, thinking about every moment that had led to this. About how Ava had never truly accepted me. How she'd tolerated me for Eliza's sake. And now with Eliza out of town, she was rewriting the rules. But what she didn't understand, what she couldn't understand, is that I've survived worse. Much worse. I was raised in a house with 3 siblings, 2 jobs, and a father who didn't believe women should speak at the dinner table. I was a principal for 30 years in a district that ignored harassment complaints and buried budget reports. I know how to play the long game, and I know how to protect those I love, especially when they're too young to understand what's being taken from them. I took out the deed copies again and looked at the signature line. It was still there, still binding, still legal. She wanted to erase me from this house. She didn't realize I helped build the foundation. The morning after was quiet. Too quiet. I woke up earlier than usual, my body sore from the stiff porch cushions, and walked inside to use the bathroom. The hallway lights were off. The air smelled like lemons and bleach. Something felt too clean. I turned the corner toward the guest room. My room and froze. The walls had been painted overnight. A pale lavender color, childish and bright, still fresh enough that the air burned slightly with that new paint smell. A new bookshelf stood where my nightstand used to be. A large pink rug was laid out across the hardwood floor, and a small twin bed with unicorn bedsheets sat against the window. My suitcase was gone. There was no trace of me left. Not even the nail in the wall where my picture had hung. I stood there in silence, staring at the room as if it were a crime scene. Because it was. Rosie appeared beside me a few seconds later, still in her pajamas, hair tousled from sleep. She looked up at the room and smiled faintly. "It's my new playroom," she said. "Mama Ava made it for me while I was sleeping." Her voice wasn't excited. It was uncertain. "She said you'd be happy," Rosie added quietly. "Because you don't like staying long anyway." That one hit deep. "I didn't say that, sweetheart," I said, kneeling slowly to her level. "I love being with you." She wrapped her small arms around my neck. "I know," she whispered. "I don't want you to leave." The sound of Ava's voice rang from the kitchen. "Rosie, breakfast." Rosie flinched. Just a little, but I noticed. I stood up slowly, my joints cracking with the weight of age and grief. Rosie ran off. I stood for another minute just looking at that room, my erasure now complete. It wasn't just a power move. It was a declaration. You don't live here. You never did, and you never will. Later that morning, Ava found me on the porch again, eating the stale sandwich she'd left like a peace offering or a taunt. She leaned against the doorframe, coffee in hand. "So," she said casually, "I spoke with Eliza. She's staying an extra day in Chicago. Big client." I stared at her. "Did she ask about me?" I asked quietly. Ava smiled too quickly. "Of course." I told her everything's great. Rosie's thriving. She turned and walked away. I felt the lie hit my chest like a fist. That's when I knew I had to act. I didn't want to call Eliza, not yet. I needed her full attention when I did. No distractions. No filtered version through Ava's careful words. So instead I made a quiet visit to the attic. There, under dusty boxes and a faded wedding dress that hadn't seen daylight in years, I found the fireproof case again. This time I removed a second file, a copy of the payment records. The wire transfers I had made years ago, the contract Eliza had signed, stating I was partial owner of the property until the debt was cleared. She had never cleared it. And the most important page, the one with my name, it hadn't faded. That evening, I sat on the porch with the folder in my lap, thinking. I wasn't going to storm into the kitchen and wave it in Ava's face. That's not who I am. No, Ava needed to dig her own hole. My job was simply to hold the shovel steady. And then later that night, the final nail slid quietly into place. I found my suitcase. It had been placed beside the trash bins at the end of the driveway. Not on the porch. Not by the door. By the trash. Like I was something rotten that needed to be taken out. There was a note taped to it, folded once, neat and impersonal. "Thanks for all your help. We'll handle things from here. Please give us space to grow as our own family. We wish you well. Ava." No mention of Eliza, no mention of Rosie, just a surgical cut. I stared at the note for a long while, and then I folded it, carefully, not to keep it, to document it. The next morning, Rosie didn't come out to the porch. Ava said she was tired, but I saw the curtains twitch. I saw that little flash of blonde curls peeking through. She was watching me. I gave her a small wave. Then I went back to the kitchen door, knocked. Ava opened it again. Eyebrows raised. "May I have a moment of your time?" I asked. She blinked. "Make it quick. I want to make sure we're on the same page," I said calmly. "You believe I have no right to be here?" "That's correct," she said with a half shrug. "It's Eliza's house. She and I make the decisions." I nodded slowly. "Interesting," I said. "Because my name is still on the deed." She blinked again. Slower this time. "Excuse me. I'm not staying because I can't leave," I said softly. "I'm staying because I've been patient. But your behavior has now crossed into something legal. And I have every document to prove it." I watched her expression drain of color. She opened her mouth, closed it again. then laughed. That's absurd. Eliza never said anything. She didn't need to, I said. But the law doesn't forget signatures. And with that, I walked back to the porch, leaving her there in the doorway, frozen. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. But it wasn't because of the hard porch cushions or the cold breeze creeping up through the floorboards. It wasn't even because of the insult of my suitcase next to the trash. It was because of her face, the way Ava stood there stunned when I mentioned the deed. Her smile slipped like melting wax. Her eyes darted calculating. She wasn't just surprised she was exposed. And I knew from experience. People like Ava don't take exposure well. The next morning was silent. Not a word. Not a glance. Not a crumb left for me on the porch table. Fine. I made tea with a small electric kettle I kept tucked away in my things and sat there quiet, still watching the sun rise. I wasn't afraid. I'd seen women like Ava before, slick, composed, polite on the surface, but always sharpening something underneath. Around mid-morning, I stepped inside to check on Rosie. The playroom formerly, my room was empty. No toys scattered. No crayon drawings taped to the walls. Just a pristine lavender box stripped of soul. I found Rosie in the hallway holding a stuffed bunny. She looked up at me with watery eyes. Mama Ava says you're mad. Are you mad, Grandma? I knelt down to her level. I'm not mad at you, sweetheart. Never. But she said, you're not part of our family anymore. She whispered. Is that true? I blinked back tears. Do you think it's true? She shook her head furiously and hugged me tight. That's when Ava appeared at the end of the hallway. Rosie, she called, voice sweet but sharp-edged, time to wash up. Rosie looked at me, then slowly let go and walked toward her. Ava held my gaze for a long time before saying quietly, you shouldn't talk to her without asking. I don't need permission to love my granddaughter. I replied just as softly. She smiled tightly. You're trying to poison her against me. No, I said. I don't need to. You're doing that all by yourself. She turned away, and I could see the panic starting to crack through the polished surface. Her control was slipping. I made one call that afternoon. Not to Eliza, not yet. To a lawyer. A kind man named Mr. Darnell, who'd helped me years ago when my husband passed. I told him the situation, outlined the facts, and asked a single question. If someone tries to push me out of a house I legally co-own, what are my rights? His answer was simple. Don't leave. Not yet. She has no authority. You do. He offered to prepare paperwork. I told him to wait. I wasn't after war. Not yet. But now I had backing. By sunset, Rosie snuck out to the porch again. She crawled into my lap with her stuffed bunny and laid her head on my chest. We sat there for nearly an hour. No words. Just her heartbeat against mine. Then she whispered, can you tell me the stars again? So I pointed. That one's Orion. See the belt? And there, Cassiopeia. Looks like a W. She smiled into the night. Then the sliding glass door opened. Ava, Rosie, bed. Now. Her voice was no longer masked. Rosie flinched. I looked up steady. She's fine here. I'll bring her in soon. Ava stepped outside, arms crossed. This ends tonight. Agreed, I said. But it'll end on my terms. She moved closer, lowering her voice. You think a piece of paper makes you powerful? No, I replied. But the truth does. And I've written down every word, every move. She went silent. I kissed Rosie's head and whispered, go inside, sweetheart. I'll be right there. Rosie didn't argue. She walked past Ava, who stepped aside but didn't move far. You have no idea who you're dealing with, she said. Oh, I do, I answered, looking right at her. A woman who's so insecure she had to erase a grandmother to feel like a mother. She froze. I stood slowly, the ache in my knees making me wince, but I didn't let her see that. You could have had my loyalty, I said, my help, even my silence. But you chose war over peace, and now you'll have neither. I walked past her. She didn't follow. Eliza still hadn't called. And I was beginning to think Ava had intercepted something changed, a setting muted, a notification, something sly and quiet. She was smart like that, calculated. The kind of woman who never says what she's really thinking, but always manages to shift the air in the room. I didn't blame Eliza, not yet. She was likely busy with meetings, presentations, a dinner or two. She trusted Ava to hold the home together in her absence. And she trusted me to be the calm, helpful presence I'd always been. But Eliza had no idea she'd left her mother in the lion's den. And this lioness, she was running out of patience. I took Rosie to the backyard that morning. Ava didn't argue. I think she was watching, waiting, trying to figure out what angle I would strike from. But I wasn't striking. Not yet. I was witnessing, quietly, carefully, preparing. Rosie picked up sticks and leaves and asked if we could make a fairy house. So we did. I want to build a house that no one can take away, she said, sticking a feather into the makeshift roof. I nearly broke. Inside, Ava closed the blinds one by one. Deliberate. Silent. Like boarding up windows before a storm. She could feel it. That afternoon, I sent the message. Just 8 words. Eliza, I need to talk. Alone. Urgent. I didn't explain. I didn't elaborate. I just hit send and turned the tablet off. If Ava was spying, she'd have to work harder than that. By evening, Rosie was unusually quiet. She didn't come to the porch. She didn't peek through the curtains. The lights were out early. I knew something was happening. Ava didn't speak to me the entire night. She passed me once on her way to the garage and paused briefly. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," she said flatly. "No," I said. "I'm making sure Rosie remembers who kept her safe." She left without another word. I made a fresh cup of tea, opened my notebook, and started writing. Not memories, evidence. Dates. Words spoken. Conditions of the house. Locked kitchen. My belongings removed. Emotional distress on a minor. Mr. Darnell had already said it. If this escalated, I'd need documentation. And Ava had given me plenty. The next morning, I woke to a vibration on the tablet. "Eliza, just saw your message. What's going on? Is everything okay?" My fingers hovered over the screen. "What do you tell your daughter, that the woman she built a life with is quietly torturing her mother? That the house she calls a home has been turned into a chessboard of dominance and humiliation?" I typed back, "Please come home. I'll explain when you arrive. This isn't something I can say over text." She replied instantly, "Coming. I'll move my flight up. Home by tomorrow night." And just like that, the war tipped. Not toward violence. Toward truth. I had 36 hours left. Ava must have sensed it. She hovered more. Started smiling again, performative too wide. She offered me coffee the next morning, which I accepted without drinking. "Everything good?" she asked. "Perfect," I said. "Almost peaceful." She tilted her head. "That's nice. Eliza will be glad to hear that." I smiled. "Oh, I'm sure she will." She didn't like that. Her grip tightened on the mug she held. For the first time since this began, I saw it, the crack. The fear. She had gone too far too quickly. And now the bridge back was burning behind her. I spent that day with Rosie. We painted in silence, mostly her speaking, me listening. She drew a house with 2 people inside, me and her. Ava was drawn outside looking through the window. "I didn't know where to put her," she said innocently. "She doesn't like hugs anymore." I folded the picture and tucked it into my notebook. Proof of a child's truth. That evening, I stood outside the guest room. No, the playroom, and stared at what had once been mine. The fresh paint, the unicorn bedsheets, the perfect shelf with books Rosie never asked for. I opened the closet door. In the corner behind the new boxes, I saw them. My shoes, tucked away, dusty, hidden like shame. I reached in and pulled them out, stood in them again. The soles creaked a little, but they still fit. Ava passed behind me in the hallway. She stopped. "Finding anything?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, slipping the shoes on. "My footing." She rolled her eyes and disappeared into the kitchen. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Eliza would be home tomorrow. And the truth. It would be waiting at the door with open arms. Eliza's car pulled into the driveway just after 6 p.m. Rosie saw it first. She squealed, dropped her markers, and ran barefoot across the yard. I followed behind more slowly, my heart pounding, not from excitement but from dread. Because I didn't know which Eliza was getting out of that car. The daughter who once clung to me when she had nightmares, or the woman who now shared a bed with someone who tried to erase me. She stepped out in heels and a black blazer, her hair pulled tight like armor. She spotted Rosie, opened her arms, and lifted her up with a laugh. But when she saw me, her smile faltered. "Mom, I'm here," I said simply. She walked up, Rosie still in her arms, and kissed my cheek. "What's going on?" I glanced toward the house. "Let's talk. Just you and me." Ava appeared at the door like clockwork, all sunny smiles and open gestures. "Eliza, baby. Welcome home. You must be exhausted. Let's get you settled." Eliza held up a hand. "Give me a minute, okay?" Ava froze. Something shifted. We sat on the porch just like old times. Rosie was inside watching her cartoons. Ava hovered in the kitchen window, pretending not to listen. I handed Eliza a small folder. Inside, printed messages, photos, my notes. "Documentation." She flipped through in silence. Each page seemed to drain a little more color from her face. "You've been sleeping where?" "Out here, on the porch." Her hands trembled as she held up a photo, my suitcase next to the trash cans. "She said you offered to stay outside. That you needed air?" "She said a lot of things." Eliza looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just listen." And I told her. Everything, not theatrically, not bitterly. Just truth, raw and real. The kitchen locks. The playroom. The way Ava told Rosie I was no longer family. The way I was erased while Eliza was thousands of miles away, trusting the wrong person with the two people she loved most. Tears welled in Eliza's eyes. "Why didn't you call sooner?" "I wanted you to see it for yourself." Her breath caught in her throat. I leaned forward. "Eliza, she's not just jealous of your time with me. She's threatened by it. She wants to control every emotional thread in this house. And when she couldn't control me, she exiled me." Eliza covered her mouth. "God? I thought she was just being firm." "Yin." "She's cruel," I said. Quietly, systematically, and she's not done." A long silence passed. Then Eliza stood up. I followed her into the house. Ava turned around at the sink. Her smile reappeared, but her eyes flickered just for a second. "Eliza, sweetie, I made your favorite. I need to speak to you. Now. Privately." Ava hesitated. "Eliza," she said slowly, "whatever she told you." Eliza interrupted. She only used Ava's full name when she was furious. "Now." Ava wiped her hands and walked down the hall. I didn't follow. Instead, I sat with Rosie, who crawled into my lap without a word. The voices came muffled but sharp. Ava's rising, pleading. Eliza's firm, then fiery. Then, silence. A door slammed. Eliza returned 10 minutes later, her face pale. She said I was exaggerating, that you were manipulating me. "And what do you believe?" I asked quietly. "I believe I never should have left you alone with her," she whispered. Tears slid down her cheeks. "Mom, I'm so sorry." I reached for her hand. "No, I'm sorry for not saying something sooner." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in weeks, I felt warm, whole. Later that evening, I overheard Ava on the phone, whispers behind a closed door. "You don't understand, she's turning Eliza against me." "No, I had it under control until she brought proof. Yes, I need to fix this. Fast." She was panicking. "Good." The next morning, Eliza made an announcement over breakfast. "We're taking a few days apart. Ava's moving into her sister's." Rosie looked confused. "But why?" Eliza crouched down to her level. "Sometimes grown-ups need space, just like when we put toys away before they break." Ava didn't say goodbye. She packed quietly, slammed one drawer, and vanished. As her car pulled away, I stood at the porch. No suitcase, no blanket, no exile. Just me, and my house, and a daughter who was finally awake. For the first time in weeks, the house felt like it could breathe again. There were no locked cabinets, no blinds pulled down in the middle of the day, no passive-aggressive smiles cutting through silence. Just me, my daughter, and Rosie laughing in the kitchen over mismatched pancakes, painting each other's fingernails on the porch, watching cartoons without someone muting the joy. But peace, I learned, isn't silence. It's truth having room to live. And truth. It had only just moved in. Eliza kept to herself that first day. She was tender with Rosie, but you could see the storm building behind her eyes. The kind of storm that doesn't scream, it recalibrates. Processes, stores, plans. And that worried me more than Ava's fury ever did. That evening, Eliza sat beside me on the porch. She said I was weak, she whispered. I didn't need to ask who. She said I let you manipulate me because I have a mother wound. That I was too scared to be a real adult without pushing you out. I turned to her. And do you believe that? She looked away. I don't know what I believe anymore. That hurt. More than I expected. But I let it sit. Because daughters need room to untangle lies that wrapped around love. Mom, she said, I think I've been so desperate to build something stable that I didn't care what foundation I used. You didn't see the cracks, I said gently. I didn't want to. Silence passed between us, but not the kind we'd known before. This one had space for healing. The next day, Ava's sister showed up at the front door. Thin, tall, tight bun, same calculating eyes. She introduced herself as Lara. I'm just here to pick up the rest of Ava's things, she said, not even glancing at me. I'm not sure what you mean by rest, Eliza said coolly, appearing behind me. Lara raised an eyebrow. The things Ava left. Her blender, her books, the espresso machine. Eliza crossed her arms. This isn't a grab bag. You can take what's clearly hers. The rest stays. Lara looked offended. Wow. Ava told me you were becoming controlling, but this. I stepped forward. Calm. Controlled. Actually, she told me the same thing about you. Funny how abusers echo their own reflections. Lara blinked. Then she turned to Eliza. She's poisoning you. Eliza stared at her without blinking. No, she's finally telling the truth. Lara left with 2 boxes and a sneer. We never saw her again. But that wasn't the end. That evening, Eliza got a call from Ava. I watched her face as it lit up with guilt, then frustration, then something quieter, like sadness. After she hung up, she sat next to me on the couch. She said she's sorry, that she just got overwhelmed, that she wants to talk things through calmly with a therapist. And what do you want? I asked. She hesitated. I want Rosie to grow up in a home that feels safe. I don't know if that's possible with Ava anymore. It was the first time she said it out loud. She used to be so loving, Eliza said softly. At least in the beginning. Narcissists always are, I murmured. Until you stop feeding them. Eliza wiped her face. I feel like such a fool. You're not. You're just someone who wanted to be loved. She leaned into me like she used to when she was little. We sat that way for a long time. Later that night, I found Rosie in bed with her drawings spread all over the blanket. One caught my eye. It was me and her in a garden. Ava was outside the fence holding scissors. I pointed. What's that? She was gonna cut the flowers, Rosie said. But I told her no. I swallowed hard. What did she say? Rosie shrugged. She said you weren't supposed to plant them. But you did anyway. And now they're pretty. I tucked her in. And outside her room, I wept for every child who sees more than we think and understands more than we say. The next morning, Eliza opened the laptop. Do you still have that lawyer's number? The one who helped with the lease transfer years ago. I nodded. Good, she said. I think I need to know what my options are. The email was short, cold, precise. I'm requesting a mediated conversation regarding shared property and visitation. You have until Friday to respond. It came from Ava's lawyer, not from her. Eliza stared at the screen like it had personally betrayed her. She's already lawyering up. She always plays offense, I said. That's how she keeps people off balance. Eliza knotted the corners of her mouth tight. Then we'll respond with clarity and calm. But this time on our terms. It was the start of something I hadn't expected. Not just a fight to reclaim space, but to redefine what this family was. No more walking on eggshells. No more wondering who was safe in your own kitchen. No more pretending love can survive on fear and convenience. We called the lawyer together. She asked thoughtful questions, explained our rights, and helped Eliza draft a polite but firm reply. No need to fight, Eliza said as she typed. But I'm done being silent. The reply was sent. The boundary drawn. And for the first time since Ava had left, Eliza slept through the night. But Ava wasn't done. 2 days later, a CPS caseworker knocked on our door. Routine follow-up on an anonymous report, she said. Eliza and I exchanged a glance. About what? Eliza asked. The caseworker glanced at her clipboard. Allegations of elder neglect and unsafe living conditions for a minor. My heart stopped. It was Ava's parting shot. A knife thrown from a distance, one meant to draw blood without fingerprints. We invited the woman in. Rosie was coloring at the table, snacks and juice beside her. The living room was spotless. My bed upstairs, now where it belonged, was neatly made. The caseworker's brow furrowed as she took notes. "You were staying on the porch?" she asked me gently. "I was asked to," I replied calmly. "By whom?" I looked her in the eye. "Someone who no longer lives here." She nodded. After a walkthrough and a brief conversation with Rosie, who said Grandma makes me waffles and doesn't yell, the caseworker's shoulders relaxed. "This all seems fine," she said quietly. "I'm sorry to intrude." As she left, she turned to Eliza. "Not every anonymous tip comes from a good place." "No," Eliza said, "but thank you for being kind about it." The door shut behind her, and then Eliza exploded. She used Rosie. She dragged a child into her war. She was shaking hands clenched at her sides. I wanted to believe we could part like adults. But this is war. I sat down, letting the weight of it settle. "She wants to scare you," I said. "She's baiting you into reacting." "Well, I'm reacting legally." That afternoon, Eliza called her lawyer again. "I want to file for full custody," she said, "with monitored visits. I don't trust her with Rosie anymore." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't scream or curse. She just said it like a mother who had finally seen what she needed to protect her child from. Later that night, I sat alone on the porch again, this time by choice. The wind was soft. The flowers Rosie and I had planted were blooming, their petals like tiny, defiant flames. And then I heard it, a car pulling slowly into the driveway. My stomach dropped. Ava. She stepped out of the car like she was still the queen of something. Black sunglasses, high boots, lips pursed like she'd just sucked a lemon. She saw me and gave a thin smile. "I came to collect the last of my books." I stood. "You'll need to speak with Eliza. She's not answering my calls." "I wonder why." She stepped forward. "You always wanted this, didn't you? Her all to yourself." "I wanted her to feel safe in her own home. She was fine until you came back." "She was surviving," I said. "There's a difference." Ava's eyes narrowed. "You're just a bitter old woman. And you're a scared little girl who mistakes control for love." She blinked. "Just once." Like it stung. "Get off the porch," I added. "Before Rosie sees you and remembers she's afraid of your voice." That landed. She turned on her heel and got back in her car. And as her tires crunched down the gravel, I finally breathed again. Because for the first time, she wasn't winning. She was retreating. And I knew in my bones we weren't done yet, but the tide had turned. The court date came quicker than we expected. Just 2 weeks after Ava's visit, Eliza stood before a family court judge, her lawyer by her side, her hands clenched around a folded photo of Rosie, one of the few things she'd carried from room to room, those awful days when Ava reigned over our lives like a queen with no crown. I sat in the gallery, my palms sweating, heart-pounding eyes locked on my daughter. I wanted to protect her. But now she was the one doing the protecting. She was the lion now. Ava entered late, draped in a beige blazer and smugness. She wore sorrow like perfume, only for show. She scanned the room, and when she saw me, her expression flickered. Not fear, not regret, just calculation. She knew I was the problem she hadn't accounted for, the mirror she'd been avoiding, the witness she couldn't silence. The judge called the hearing to order. It began with statements dry, legal, rehearsed. Ava's lawyer claimed Eliza had increasingly unstable emotional tendencies since I returned. That I'd been interfering in the marital household and disrupting the minor child's emotional development. My mouth opened, but Eliza's lawyer held up a hand. "Let them talk." Then it was Eliza's turn. She stood slowly, unfolded the photo of Rosie, and spoke not with theatrics, not with tears, but with unshakable truth. "My wife locked my mother outside on a porch during winter and told my daughter to call her our guest instead of Grandma. I dismissed it for months, but it wasn't an accident. It was control. It was punishment." She paused. "I thought I was building a family. But what I built was a cage." There wasn't a sound in the courtroom except the tapping of the stenographer's keys. She used love like a leash, and when I tried to step away, she tugged harder. She filed a CPS complaint against me, against my mother, and if she can weaponize the system, she can't be trusted to co-parent in good faith. Ava's lawyer objected, but the judge waved it off. You will get your say, he said firmly, but I want to hear hers first. Eliza turned to face Ava directly. I defended you when you mocked her, when you erased her. I let you shame the person who raised me because I was too tired to fight and too lonely to admit I was wrong. Her voice cracked. But I'm not tired anymore. That line, it was electric. The judge ordered a break. Outside, Ava stormed past us toward the restroom without a word. I watched her disappear behind a white door and whispered to Eliza, You didn't just speak for Rosie. You spoke for every woman in this room who's ever been gaslit into silence. Eliza turned to me, eyes glassy. I hope the judge heard it that way. Later that evening, we didn't celebrate. We didn't cry. We just sat. Rosie was asleep, curled up with her stuffed fox. The house felt different, like it had finally remembered it was a home. Eliza handed me a cup of tea. Do you ever feel like you're mourning someone who's still alive? She asked. I nodded. You're mourning the version of her you built in your head, not the one who showed up. She smiled faintly. I think I wanted her to save me from being ordinary. You're not ordinary, I said. You're free. A beat passed. Then she asked, Do you think she'll fight this to the bitter end? Yes, I said without hesitation, but bitter's all she has left. The next morning, Ava called. Eliza answered on speaker. I'm dropping the case, Ava said flatly. Tell your lawyer. I'm done. Eliza didn't speak. Then Ava added, But I'm keeping the car. My name's on the title. Eliza replied, Keep it. I'd rather walk than sit next to you again. Ava hung up. We stared at each other, stunned. She gave up, Eliza said softly. No, I replied. She lost. And she hates that more than anything. That night, Rosie drew a new picture. It was a house. 4 windows. 3 hearts inside. No fence. No scissors. Just flowers. The first few days after Ava dropped the case felt surreal. Like waking up from a storm to find the house still standing. The roof didn't leak. The windows weren't shattered. But the silence, it was loud. Rosie kept asking when Mama Ava would call. Eliza always answered gently, Not today, sweet pea. By the 3rd day, Rosie stopped asking. Instead, she started following me around with that fox plush tucked under her arm. Grandma, she whispered once while we folded laundry together. Do you like it better when it's just us? I looked at her little face. So serious. So aware. I like it when people feel safe, I said. Don't you? She nodded slowly. Mama Eliza doesn't cry anymore. That night, I did. Not out of grief, but out of sheer exhausted gratitude. For the first time in years, my daughter could breathe. A week later, we began sorting the house. Not cleaning, sorting. Clearing out the bones of a broken era. We found boxes Ava had hidden in the guest closet, photographs torn in half, documents stuffed into plastic bags, and one envelope labeled simply, Margaret. Eliza handed it to me. Do you want me to open it? No, I said. Let her speak to me without translation. I opened it at the kitchen table alone. Inside, a handwritten letter. You think you won, but all you did was take back what you were too weak to defend in the first place. You made her soft. I made her survive. One day she'll come looking for me, and when she does, she'll remember what I taught her. I folded it slowly and lit a match. Eliza walked in just as I dropped the ashes into the sink. Did she say anything worth keeping? She asked. No, I said. She's still speaking to the version of you she controlled, not the woman you are now. Eliza smiled and leaned on the counter next to me. I didn't even know how angry I was until I stopped trying to make her happy. The next weekend, Eliza planned something. Just trust me, she said. She packed a picnic-dressed Rosie in her favorite sundress and we drove an hour into the hills. At first I thought it was just a day trip, but then I saw it. An open field filled with sunflowers, a quiet lake nearby, and a tiny wooden sign, Hill Family Lot, Future Home Summer, 2025. I gasped. You bought land. We're building our own place, she said softly. New walls, new rules, no ghosts. Rosie ran through the flowers laughing. Eliza watched her with a peace I hadn't seen since she was 10 years old. I want you to live with us, she said suddenly. I blinked. Not because you need it, she added, but because I want Rosie to remember this version of us. The one where love isn't followed by fear. I felt my throat close. You don't have to say yes now, she whispered. I already have, I replied. We sat in folding chairs as the sun dipped lower. I watched the shadows stretch the petals glint gold in the light. And I thought, this is what healing looks like. Not loud, not dramatic, just soft, steady forward steps. That night, back at the house, Rosie handed me a drawing. It was the new house in the sunflower field. This time there were 5 windows. Why 5? I asked. She pointed. 1 for you, 1 for Mama Eliza, 1 for me, 1 for the flowers. And the 5th, she smiled. That's the window for the light to come in. I hugged her tight, wondering how such a small soul could be so wise. We had walked through fire. Now we were planting seeds. And no matter what Ava said from the shadows, I knew we were done surviving. We were beginning. The house felt lighter every day. Not because Ava was gone, though her absence was a relief, but because Eliza was returning to herself, like someone waking up from years of being half asleep. She cooked again. Not out of obligation, but joy. She laughed in full sound, not half-formed chuckles. And Rosie. Rosie was blooming like the flowers in that field we visited. But healing doesn't erase scars. Sometimes it just teaches you how to live around them. One Tuesday morning, the doorbell rang. I was washing dishes, humming softly to myself when I glanced up and saw a familiar shadow through the frosted glass. Ava. She didn't look like herself. Her makeup was smeared, her hair unbrushed, and her eyes bloodshot hollow. She held a single paper in her hand. I didn't open the door. Eliza came down the stairs just in time to see her too. We stood behind the door together, not speaking. Then Ava raised the paper and pressed it against the glass. A custody appeal. Eliza's breath caught. She said she was done. She whispered. She doesn't know how to lose. I replied. But we're not afraid of her anymore. We didn't open the door. We didn't yell. We didn't confront. We just watched her leave. And it felt like the final scene of a play, where the villain exits without applause. By that evening, Eliza was pacing. I thought it was over. She kept muttering. I thought. It is, I said. This isn't a beginning. It's a tantrum. But what if she drags us through it again? What if Rosie... She's not dragging us, I said gently. Not this time. You're stronger now. And I'm here. She looked at me, finally still. I'm tired of always waiting for the other shoe to drop, she admitted. Then take the shoes off. I smiled. Walk barefoot into the life you deserve. She laughed a little tearful sound and pulled me into a hug. We met with the lawyer the next day. He scanned the appeal and shook his head. This is desperation, he said plainly. She has no new evidence, no standing. So what happens? Eliza asked. She'll get a hearing, but I don't expect it to go far. Especially if we show the judge what you've been doing to create stability. That land you purchased, that's gold. Eliza exhaled slowly. Rosie sat in the corner of the room coloring. She had no idea how close her life came to being disrupted again. And that made us more determined than ever. That weekend, Eliza did something bold. She invited Ava's mother, Rosie's other grandmother, to dinner. Are you sure? I asked. She's always been distant. She called me after the custody drop, Eliza said. She said she didn't know Ava had filed it again. She apologized. I was skeptical, but I held my tongue. When she arrived, I watched her closely. She hugged Rosie tightly, brought her a book. And when she looked at me, she nodded with something close to remorse. I never knew she treated you like that, she said softly. I thought you were just cold. I was cold, I replied. To protect myself. She nodded again. I hope you know I'm not like her. Time would tell. But that night, the dinner was peaceful. Rosie smiled through the whole thing, and I realized sometimes small bridges are worth building, even if only to show our children a different kind of ending. The following Monday, the court dismissed Ava's appeal. Not enough evidence. No custody change. No visitation adjustments. Just silence. No letter from Ava this time. No apology. No fury. Just nothing. And that was louder than any scream. We celebrated quietly. Rosie baked a cake with Eliza, lopsided and messy but beautiful in its imperfection. They called it freedom cake. We ate it at sunset on the back porch. And for the first time, I didn't look over my shoulder, because there was nothing left to fear. The world didn't change all at once. no lightning bolts, no grand declarations. Just small, steady shifts. A door opening that used to slam shut. A voice no longer raised in defense. A child's laughter not echoing through tension. But in those subtle shifts, I saw something powerful. We were free. Eliza started drawing house plans again. She'd sit at the dining table in the evenings, Rosie perched beside her with a set of colored pencils. "This room will have giant windows," Eliza explained one night. "Lots of light." "Like the field?" Rosie asked. Exactly like the field. She was rebuilding not just a house, but a vision of life that didn't revolve around survival. And every pencil line, every curve of the roof felt like a small act of rebellion against everything Ava had tried to break. One morning, I noticed something missing from the hallway. A framed photo, Rosie's first Christmas. The one Ava always insisted on placing front and center. Gone. In its place was a new picture. Me, Eliza, and Rosie laughing in a patch of sunflowers. It wasn't posed. It was taken by a stranger in the field who emailed it to us later saying, "You three looked like joy." I stared at it for a long time, not because I missed the old one, but because for the first time we weren't pretending. The next ripple came at school. Rosie had drawn a family tree for her kindergarten project. She brought it home beaming. I unfolded the paper and scanned it. At the top, Grandma Maggie, wise and soft. Eliza, brave mama. Rosie, future queen of sunflowers. There was no mention of Ava, just a footnote in the corner that read, "Not everyone who makes you is your family." I blinked back tears. That night I showed it to Eliza. "She's watching us," I said. "And she's choosing what to carry." Eliza touched the paper gently. "I used to worry she'd inherit my trauma," she whispered. "But maybe she's inherited your clarity instead." We kept moving forward. Eliza finalized the land purchase. The foundation would go in by summer's end. I helped her pack up the old house in small bursts, room by room. Each drawer held ghosts, letters never sent, apologies never given, versions of ourselves we no longer needed. In the attic, I found a trunk Ava had sealed with duct tape. Inside, journals, not hers, Eliza's. Dozens of them. I handed them to her expecting tears. Instead, she smiled. I thought she burned these. She sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through pages of her teenage pain. Not to relive it, but to understand how far she'd come. She tried to erase me, she said, but I wrote too much to disappear. We buried the trunk in the sunflower field. Not burned. Not thrown away. Buried like a time capsule of everything survived. Rosie helped us mark the spot with a small stone she painted. A yellow sun and a fox. I asked her why the fox. "Because they're clever," she said. "And quiet. Like us." She wasn't wrong. That night, Eliza asked me something I didn't expect. "Do you ever regret not stepping in sooner?" I took a long breath. "I do. I regret the years you spent believing her lies. But I also know, if I had forced you out sooner, you might have run back." She nodded slowly. "I needed to break to see who I really was." "And you're stronger than you've ever been," I said. "And Rosie, she's proof we did something right." Eliza smiled. "She's never asked for Ava." "She never will," I replied. "Because some roots aren't meant to grow, and some flowers only bloom once you rip the rod out." Summer arrived with the kind of warmth that settles into your bones and tells you, this season is yours. The construction crew broke ground on a Tuesday. Rosie wore her yellow dress and held a plastic shovel, insisting she help. Eliza stood beside her hand, shielding her eyes from the sun, watching as the first slice of earth was lifted. It wasn't just a home being built. It was a life reimagined. And I stood on the porch of the rental, coffee in hand, and realized I didn't ache anymore. Not for Ava's approval. Not for a past version of our family. Not for a seat at a table I was always meant to leave. 2 weeks later, we received a letter. From Ava, handwritten. Eliza opened it slowly, sitting on the porch steps. I sat beside her, unsure if I should read over her shoulder or give her space. She handed it to me instead. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I see now what I did, and what I became. I blamed you for a life I never built, then tried to burn yours when I couldn't rebuild mine. I don't deserve Rosie. I know that now. I hope one day she'll understand I was sick. But that doesn't excuse me. I'm leaving town. Don't worry, I'm not coming back. Take care of her." Of you? Of the only family that ever tried to save me. No return address. Just a signature. Ava. Eliza didn't cry. She folded the letter neatly, placed it in a small tin box, and set it in the back of the kitchen drawer. Closure, she said simply. Not forgiveness. Not forgetting. Just an end. By mid-August, the foundation was finished. And so was something else. My heart, once clenched tight with grief and fury, had finally softened. I stood in Rosie's new room, unfinished, still dusty, and watched her place a single plush fox on the windowsill. She turned to me. "Grandma, will we live here forever?" "No one lives forever, sweetheart," I said gently. "But the love we build here, that stays." She seemed to think about that for a while. Then simply, "I want it to stay." And in her eyes, I saw something Ava never gave us: peace. On the last night in the rental, we had a small farewell dinner. Candles, spaghetti, laughter echoing off empty walls. Eliza raised a glass of lemonade. To what we survived. I raised mine. To who we became. Rosie raised hers, milk, of course. To sunflowers. And foxes. And quiet magic. We clinked our glasses, and I felt something settle deep in my chest. The weight of years lifted. Not erased. Not denied. But carried differently. Like a scar you wear with quiet pride. Later that night, Eliza asked me to sleep in Rosie's room one last time. "I think she needs it," she said. "She's been asking about you more lately." In the middle of the night. So I tucked myself into the little cot beside her bed. In the dark, she whispered, "Do you think my mom still dreams about me?" I paused. "I think she does. But sometimes dreams hurt too much to remember." Rosie turned to face me. "I don't hurt anymore." And with that, she fell asleep. Just like that. As if everything cruel had finally let go. We moved into the new house on a cool September morning. Not everything was finished. The paint still smelled sharp. The yard was a sea of dirt and promise. But it was ours. Ours in a way no house had ever truly been. Eliza carried the last box in. Rosie bounced from room to room, naming each space as if it were a kingdom. "This one's the thinking room. The next one's the dancing room. And Grandma's room, that's the magic room." I smiled. "What kind of magic?" She shrugged with a grin. "The kind that makes people come back to life." It was quiet that first night. The kind of silence that doesn't ache, but holds. I stood alone in the kitchen, the moonlight catching the edge of the counter. It reminded me of all the other nights I'd stood alone. In that cold guest room, on Eliza's childhood porch, outside Ava's house when I wasn't welcome inside. But this time, I wasn't waiting. I wasn't hoping someone would see me, hear me, remember me. I was home. Eliza found me out there barefoot on the back deck, coffee mug in hand. She didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me. Finally. "You never asked for revenge." I looked at her surprised. "But you got it," she continued. "You just didn't need to destroy anything to feel powerful." I smiled gently. "Some people build fires," I said. "Others plant seeds. And look," I gestured to the dark field beyond the fence line. "Ours are growing." The first sunflower buds had started breaking through. Even in darkness, they reached for light. Weeks passed. Ava didn't return. No calls. No emails. No threats. It was like the wind had swept her out of our story. But her absence didn't erase the damage. It only allowed us the room to heal it. Rosie never asked again, and Eliza stopped looking over her shoulder. We were in every quiet way free. One day, Rosie brought home a school assignment. "Draw your family," it said. She'd filled the page with soft colors. Me, Eliza, her, and above us, 3 tall sunflowers. At the bottom, she wrote, "This is my forever family. The ones who stay. The ones who love quietly but deeply. The ones who didn't give up on each other. Ever." I read it once, then again, and I cried. Not the kind of tears that come from pain, but the kind that say, this is where the story was always meant to end. Not with screams, not with slamming doors, but with roots, with peace, with 3 women learning how to grow again. So if you're listening to this story wondering if your silence makes you weak, let me tell you, silence when chosen is a blade. It cuts through chaos. It protects peace. And sometimes it plants the very seed of your comeback. I didn't fight Ava with fists. I didn't scream in courtrooms or slam doors. I simply waited for her to fall under the weight of her own lies. And when she did, I built a life so beautiful it made her absence feel like grace. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever been cast out, humiliated, or made to feel small, know this: you are not alone. You are not forgotten. And your revenge doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be yours. Quiet, true, and absolutely unforgettable. Take a moment to subscribe to Grace's Truth for more stories like mine. And if you've ever faced a betrayal in your own family, share your story in the comments. You never know who needs to hear it. Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers, and sometimes that's more than enough.